Markel Shea.
And I'm Jeff Sununian, welcoming you back to another episode of iBerkshires TV. We'd like to say thank you to the sponsor of this week's show, MountainOne.
Later on, we'll talk to Bob Fraser, the CEO of MountainOne, about their commitment and growth in Berkshire County.
Also, newly re-elected Pittsfield Mayor Linda Tyer will stop by to talk to Tammy Daniels. But first, here are our top stories as reported on by iBerkshires.com.
It was all politics this past week as the county saw its two largest communities re-elect their mayoral incumbents on November 5th. Pittsfield sent Linda Tyer to City Hall for another 4-year term by a 4% margin in one of the more expensive mayoral contests in Western Mass. We'll be sitting down with the mayor later in this week's show. And North Adams incumbent Thomas Bernard easily outdistanced McCann School Committee member Rachel Branch. Bernard will be serving his second 2-year term.
Berkshire Health Systems has gifted the Breen Center a building and the funds for renovating it. That's nearly $400,000 in total for the creation of a mental health and substance use disorder recovery facility in North Adams. The first of its kind home in the city will have a capacity for 16 and will be located on Arnold Place. The Breen Center operates two similar facilities in Pittsfield called Keenan House and will name their North Adams Center Keenan House North. Northern Berkshire County has been declared a hotspot by the state for opioid addiction, and recently residents have expressed concern over the lack of treatment centers for loved ones living with addiction and mental health issues.
Congressman Joe Kennedy was in the county November 9th campaigning for his 2020 U.S. Senate run. He spent the Saturday morning in North Adams talking to clinicians about substance abuse issues in the region. Workers from Tapestry Health and 18 Degrees got him up to speed on overdose prevention programs, needle exchanges, and other substance abuse services. He was hosted by District Attorney Andrea Harrington and Mayor Thomas Bernard. Later that morning in Pittsfield, Kennedy was endorsed by Harrington in his run against incumbent Ed Markey. Markey spent 36 years in the House before replacing John Kerry in the Senate when Kerry went on to become Secretary of State under President Obama.
Soldier-On will be opening a permanent women's housing facility in Pittsfield. Construction began in March on the 14-unit structure adjacent to the men's living facility in the Soldier-On Village. The facility will provide a permanent subsidized living space for homeless women veterans transitioning out of temporary situations. The house will be named after Soldier-On consultant Katie Doherty, who said she once considered the project was unattainable, but is an example of, quote, a testament to when women say what they need and voice their needs, they are respected. She expects the home to be move-in ready by February.
Speaking of veterans, Monday marked the 100th anniversary of Veterans Day in the country. Pittsfield, North Adams, and Williamstown all celebrated local veterans with events throughout the day. James Brio, an Air Force veteran and National Executive Committee member for the American Legion, took the opportunity to endorse membership in the Veterans Organization. Membership in the American Legion has gone from 3.3 million post-World War II to about 1.8 million today. Organizations like the American Legion serve as vital lobbying groups for veterans and services. Any veteran interested in joining can visit your local post or visit legion.org.
iBerkshires would like to take this time to thank the sponsor of this week's episode, MountainOne.
We had Bob Fraser from MountainOne stop by to tell us a bit about what they do.
Greetings, Berkshire County, and thank you for joining us here on iBerkshires TV. And actually, one of my favorite parts of this job is when we get, we do have people that sponsor the show. We need to stay afloat and get the show sponsored so we can have all the civic-minded guests on. One of my favorite things is when you get good people and good outfits who do sponsor the show. Today, we're joined by the CEO of MountainOne, Bob Fraser. First of all, thank you for sponsoring the show, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for that nice introduction. I appreciate it.
I just found out that Bob actually lives above Publix, so I'm in North Adams, and I'm very, very jealous because it's one of my favorite places. But in doing all my research here for MountainOne, first of all, you guys do a lot of things within the financial sector, and we're going to get to that a little bit later. But you guys are so committed, and I've always been committed to Berkshire County. As somebody with a construction background, one of my favorite projects that you did right at your home office there at 85 Main Street in North Adams, and then also here, now that you own the building on East Street in Pittsfield, up near the Berkshire Innovation Center. Talk to a little about what those projects meant to you.
Sure. Well, I think it's really important to remember we were founded in 1848 in North Adams. North Adams is the headquarters of MountainOne. We are committed to this area, to our headquarters. It's where the bulk of our employees are. It's our all of our supporting areas for the entire company, and we see it as a fiduciary responsibility to the community to invest back into the community.
And that can be rare nowadays.
Well, it's tough when there are really tough economic challenges in the community. But for us, we think our role is to make a difference economically in the community. And that goes towards projects that we have loaned against and have been heavily involved in that we felt would make a difference in the community, to community engagement, as well as our own investment into the North Adams downtown with the investment we made at 85 Main to bring our insurance agency down from Union Street to downtown and really build out first-class office space at 85 Main. And it also houses our investment division. It's adjacent to the bank, as well as the commitment we have in Pittsfield with the property at Silver Lake Boulevard, and we were the only tenant forever. In the William Stanley Park.
For the time, but that's not
I
true.
think so, but it was a financial transaction where we had a very long-term lease. Circumstances occurred that we had an opportunity to buy the building, and it made sense for us economically to do so. We consummated that transaction earlier this summer, and I think it just shows another example of our commitment to the community.
It really is a commitment, because those are two flagship properties in the two biggest cities in Berkshire County. And again, as someone who did a lot of projects in really old buildings in my old life in construction, it was an amazing job that you did, especially in North Adams, obviously. It revitalized a big block of downtown. And that's incredible to see. And I think that works into, you mentioned since 1884.
1848.
Excuse me, 1848.
Yeah.
I get a lot of things wrong sometimes. And you are a community bank, and you're proud of being a community bank. But once you get involved in all your services, although you still get that hometown feel, you offer anything that's available in the financial sector out here. It's a lot bigger than a community bank.
Right, and we're a community bank in all our locations, whether it's North Adams, Williamstown, Pittsfield, and south of Boston, and Quincy, Rockland, and Scituate. And it's important to remember we were three banks at one time. We consolidated the three banks, rebranded them as MountainOne. But one, we never wanted to lose our commitment to the community. We want to bring a level of banking and financial sophistication to our communities, and we also want to make sure that we are engaged in the community. And so it's important for us on the lending side that we're going to finance projects that are going to make a difference in the community. And I think we've exhibited that up in North Adams by our investment in the NORAD mill with Dave Morazi.
Incredible.
Our financing of tourists, which I think is changing the North Adams area. Our investment here in Pittsfield a number of years ago on Hotel and North.
Yeah.
Again, those types of, in part, leaps of faith, but also sound economic judgments to commercially invest in projects that are going to make a difference for this area. And I'm pleased to see that these projects are doing well, and the people behind them are totally committed to the Berkshires as well. And so it really was a partnership in that regard. On the community engagement side, we're heavily involved with community engagement. One of the things I'm really proud that we have recently done was the sponsorship of Lever's Innovation Summit. And I think that is a great vehicle to foster entrepreneurialism here in the Berkshires, where it's culturally and practically it doesn't have a great impact right now. We've have a history of large employers, and we need to create, with those large employers now gone, we need to create more entrepreneurs, people who are going to stake a claim in this area, build a business, employ people, and create more prosperity for the area. It's also important that we do our civic duty, and we're heavily involved through various community activities, but even more importantly, we have a number of core commitments, and one of those core commitments is community engagement. And our employees are heavily involved in volunteer activities throughout the area. On boards as volunteers. We provide the time and we financially support many of these organizations. And I think it's just part of our role as not only as a financial institution, a major employer, but just culturally doing the right thing for our community.
And, you know, we actually just had the newly reelected mayor, Linda Tyer, on in Pittsfield. And it is that engagement now between business and municipalities that, especially here in Berkshire County, and even getting out to Eastern Mass, you just can't survive without it anymore. And it shows, I think it shows incredible adaptability on your part when you say, you know, it's easy to work with GE, all the GE, whoever it was that used to be here, to now transitioning to working with smaller businesses. And you just can't survive without it. And I think you guys do a great job of fostering those relationships. You talk about tourists, Hotel on North. These are destinations that you guys have been involved with. People not only from Eastern Mass, Connecticut, New York, all over the country, all over the world that come here now.
Well, I think we all have a role to play in terms of governmental support. I view that as opening the doors for business and being supportive of changes or zoning or TIF agreements, whatever needs to be done to assist the formation of the opportunity. But really what's critically important is that the people that we're involved with come here with not only a vision, but also their ability to have a financial commitment. We're not a charity. We're not going to just throw our dollars at someone who has a good idea. Whoever is coming to us and looking to work with us has to have their own capital as well.
This is, again, one of my favorite things when you see people committed to this area from the top on down, right from the top, CEO Bob Fraser, to all the employees getting involved in the community just to strengthen it. And it's one of the reasons we actually started this show is to come and welcome people like you that allows us to have people like the mayor on and people from Hancock Shaker Village and people from any other sort of civic-minded charitable organization in town. So we can't thank you enough, Bob, and thank you to everyone else over at MountainOne. You guys are welcome back anytime. Thank you so much for joining us.
Jeff, thanks for having me. I love talking about what we can do here in the Berkshires.
We'd like to thank Bob Fraser for stopping by and for MountainOne for sponsoring this week's show.
The North Adams City Council hit the brakes on the sale of vacant Sullivan School, saying proposal needs more vetting. Mayor Thomas Bernard is recommending the former school building be sold to Berkshire Advanced Manufacturing Training and Education Center for $1. The group would invest about $14 million to fit out the 50-year-old building as a workforce training and entrepreneur hub. However, the sale of two other city-owned properties sailed through at the November 12th meeting. Local developer David Marizzi offered $225,000 for the Johnson School, with plans on filling it with 20 high-end apartments. 200 acres of unused watershed land in Pownell was sold to the Massachusetts Land Conservation Trust for $175,000. The city had been trying to unload the surplus properties for several years.
Clarksburg school officials are pushing to get a new secure entryway installed before a February 2020 deadline to spend a $35,000 state grant funding the project. The challenge is to bid it, contract with a firm, order the safety glass, and get everything installed, all while there are no children in the school. Officials are negotiating with teachers for a full 2-week Christmas break, which would make the kids happy, and a half day the Friday before. The entryway is one of a number of upgrades being done piecemeal after voters rejected a $19 million renovation of the 60-year-old school building.
The Adams Board of Health may limit tobacco sales to help curb oversaturation and access for teens. Board member David Rhodes said the town had around 7 establishments that sell cigarettes and other tobacco products, with more potentially on the way. Rhodes also presented a few options: to set a cap at the 7 tobacco sellers, set a cap below the current number and allow for attrition, or allow one more establishment than what the town has, but have a thorough review process that considers surroundings. Other town officials raised concerns that a cap could affect retail development and growth.
As we reported earlier, Mayor Linda Tyer was reelected to her mayoral post last week. She stopped by to talk about her plans for Pittsfield over the next 4 years with our own Tammy Daniels.
With us is Pittsfield Mayor Linda Tyer, fresh off her re-election victory. Welcome, Mayor Tyer.
Thank you for having me on the show. I'm so glad that iBerkshires is going to continue this interview platform. I think it's great community outreach, so I'm looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, you were one of the first people we had on to interview. We appreciate you helping us launch this program.
It's great.
And congratulations on your victory.
Thank you very much. It was hard fought.
Nice.
I think we had a fair airing of all the issues, and I'm so pleased with the outcome because I feel that voters recognized our hard work and accomplishments over the last 4 years, and acknowledge that there's more work to do always when you're in an elected position, but being given the opportunity to go back to work for the people of Pittsfield is a great honor.
Yeah, I would definitely say it was definitely hard fought. There were a lot of issues aired.
There were.
So do you see, I mean, your election is sort of a validation of the steps that you've been taking over the last 4 years?
I do really feel that way, especially as it relates to the economy. And while public safety was a big topic in the election, we've made some real strides in public safety. Thinking about the future of our schools, making sure that we're taking advantage of grant opportunities that come our way so that we can, do more for the people of Pittsfield without putting pressure on taxpayers. We want to keep nurturing our new economy and our job creation strategies in this next term, and continue to focus on public safety issues, and continue to stabilize neighborhoods. And there's always interesting things to tackle.
And you're the first mayor of Pittsfield who has had a 4-year term. A lot of things, I mean, there were comments that a lot of things seem to be coming in the final year of your term, but sometimes things take 2, 3, 4, 5 years to come up. Are you seeing, from when you went into to the ending, I mean, were you seeing like a progression of what you were working on?
Well, I really objected to that characterization of my time, my 4 years, because I felt like we worked hard every single year that we were in office. In fact, when we took office in January 2016, we were immediately confronted by a fiscal crisis. So we had to get busy stabilizing that situation as quickly as possible, and that took us almost 3 years, and we're in the 4th year now of starting to feel the benefits of our smart, sound financial planning. So, so beginning in year 1, we tackled that, and we started pulling together a streamlined strategy for building an economy and creating jobs. We started that in year 2. We started to see the benefits of that in year 3. We also got to work in year 2 pulling together the pieces for the Berkshire Innovation Center. So while it was maybe a interesting narrative for the opponent to say that I only did work in the last year, it's also just not true. So, and I think we were able to get that message out to the people of Pittsfield and prove to them that we have indeed been working very hard on their behalf.
So what do you see going forward for the next 4 years? Because, this is sort of long-term planning that you were able to do.
That's right. That's right. So continuing to nurture and build this economy in Pittsfield is going to be vital for stabilizing our future in terms of supporting business development, business growth, and job creation. Very, very important important that we don't take our foot off the gas on that. In fact, we need to continue to evolve it. So one of the things we want to do is to do a feasibility study to determine if we should become an internet service provider, a fiber optic internet service provider, which will be good for business and for residents. We want to continue to strengthen our law enforcement agency so that we can continue our efforts in protecting the public, and part of that conversation ought to be around a more modern, new police station for a modern law enforcement agency. If anybody's been in the police station, they will see for themselves just the poor condition, the poor quality of work environment that it is for our officers.
I have been in there, and I totally agree.
Yes, yes. I mean, it's literally, we can't run another single piece of wire. Right. So we've got to be serious about that. And we also need to have a conversation about our public schools. Teacher retention and recruitment is going to be vital, because it's not just a challenge in Pittsfield, it's a national challenge. So exploring how to strengthen that, along with what's the future of our schools for our kids and families.
So these are some big issues that you're going to be facing
Certainly.
In your second term. So do you feel that you now have a team assembled that's going to be able to really support you in these projects?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that happened in the first year of my first term is you're building your team, you're setting a vision, you're creating a culture. And so that's the advantage that we'll have in the second term, that we've got this strong team of leaders at the senior management level, especially. And with a new city council, hopefully there'll be some fresh perspectives that we can feel re-energized about the work that's before us.
Yeah, there is going to definitely be a change in configuration in the city council going in. You have four people who are leaving.
4 who are leaving, yes.
Out of an 11-member council. So it's going to be certainly a change. And how do you feel? I mean, you know some of these people are coming on. How do you feel about the working relationship?
Well, I'm very optimistic that we will have a collaborative, productive working relationship. And while I understand that the role of the council and the role of the executive, mayor, and city council relationship is meant to be a checks and balance, and I honor and respect that, I also think that we can solve problems and move our city forward, even when we're confronted by disagreements about how we might do that. But doing it in a way that doesn't damage relationships is going to be something that I'm committed to, and I do think the new members of the City Council have seen what has been, at least in this last year, some really political theater at the City Council to the detriment of solving problems.
Yeah. So you're hoping that this will be more collaborative?
Certainly.
I guess is certainly
certainly. And I certainly take responsibility for being the other part of that relationship.
Okay. So what else do you feel you have, sort of what your impressions were through the election, and when out talking to people while you were campaigning, what are the issues that Pittsfield residents are concerned about that you're going to be tackling?
What I heard from many people is this real sense of pride in their city and wanting the best for their city, their best for their neighborhood and their families, acknowledging that we have our challenges like every other community, but also recognizing that we've sort of started to redefine who we are as a community. We've sort of accepted that our future is not going to be what it was when GE was here, that they respect this idea of a diverse economy. Certainly, public safety is something that's on the minds of people, and the opioid crisis and how that all intersects is something people like to chat about. Schools for sure.
Always, yes, always.
And the challenges within our schools and the changing demographics of our students. That's also been something people wanted to talk about.
And how are you with working with, some of these, we've talked about some of these issues, when you're talking about, education and crime and opioid, this is affecting the entire region. And Pittsfield is the biggest community by far, like 3 or 4 times the size of the next one, which is North Adams. You're the leader, really, the hub of the Berkshire County. And how do you see yourself and Pittsfield taking on sort of leadership roles on a regional basis?
Well, certainly we do consider ourselves to be the heart of the Berkshires, the hub of the Berkshires. And just as I want to build those collaborative relationships with the elected officials, city council and school committee. I've really enjoyed my growing partnership with Mayor Bernard in North Adams and with the other officials in the other communities in the Berkshires. For example, one of the things we're doing around public safety is Pittsfield has taken the lead on a comprehensive application to the Department of Justice for a designation that would bring us some federal resources, personnel and funding. But it really required a county-wide commitment and participation in the development of this application. So we've been working with our county-wide law enforcement officials to pull together this application, which is going through the review process now. So certainly knowing the network of the Berkshires, but also the network of the state has really been beneficial in my time in office, and I want to continue with those strong relationships.
Great. Anything, we're about out of time, but anything that you think people should know?
Well, I think there's going to be some more exciting news around some new businesses, some very interesting science and technology businesses that we're having conversations with. I can't tell you how exciting it is to me to see the role of the business development manager, Mike Coakley, how that role has really transformed the work that we do around business development. And every day he's in conversations with people who want to make an investment in our city. It's really, really wonderful to see that kind of interest in our city in terms of starting a business or growing your business here. The housing market in our city is really remarkable. People are choosing to buy homes in our city. That's a sign of good health. So I'm really looking forward to January 2020 when we can kick off a new term together with new members of the City Council and School Committee.
And will the at-home program be coming back up?
We are definitely going to take that back up, maybe take a look at it internally and see if there's some ways we might want to redesign it or go back to the original proposal. But I do plan to bring that back in the first few months of the first term.
Well, that was
year.
The first time you came on was to talk about that program, so maybe the next time we'll be talking about it again.
The success of it and how we finally got it across the finish line.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Thank you so much for being with us, and congratulations again. I hope we'll be talking to you quite often.
I would love to come on. I know that there's always lots to talk about, so I welcome the invitation.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you to Mayor Tyer for stopping in, and thank you as well to our viewers for supporting iBerkshires TV.
We'd like to thank our sponsor, MountainOne, and their CEO, Bob Fraser, for sitting down with us.
Please join us again on our next episode of iBerkshires TV for your local news, interviews, and more.